What's kind of like some of the most valuable tips you ever learned?
Um, the it's all about the customer.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Mic. I go by the name of Keith Keys, and on today we have with us, he's a recording engineer, he's a musician, he's a father, a husband, he's a handyman, he's the owner of Whisper Studios in Kokomo. How do you say that?
Kokomo. Yep.
Kokomo, Indiana. He has the YouTube channel, and his channel is the Recording Studio Loser. I bring to the stage none other than Jeremy Mang. Jeremy, how's it going?
Good, man. That was an intro. Holy cow.
I try to get some of them down. So I named a couple things about you, but before we get deep into this, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, in your own words?
I think first you said I was a dad. I think that's the first thing that I identify as, I guess. Been a musician for a long time, worked, toured as a musician, did all the weird things that musicians do, like all the weird gigs, doing live sound, stage hand, all that stuff. But music is like the hobby that just happens to make money, if that makes sense. And then, everything else, it just goes back to family. That's what makes all this make sense. So I appreciate that you said that in the intro. That was cool.
I think those are the things that really matter and make a difference, because for a lot of us, and you totally understand this because you are a great influence to the music community via YouTube, and you are part of the group of individuals who are helping to teach us, to train, for everyone to learn kind of the things that revolve around music, doing music full time, making the best music we possibly can make. And a part of that is your personal life and family and things of that nature really does make a difference. Before I got married and I was young, I could do everything in the world music wise in studio. When I got married and I had a kid, I had to rethink a lot of these decisions. So it helps play a big part in kind of even the decision makings we do with our music, how far we can go, which way we want to go. Does it make sense? Does it financially make sense? All of those things. So I really do think that that's important. So how did you get into music? What were the things that influenced you to actually get into music, and not even just into music, like becoming an engineer, having your own studio? That's one thing. A lot of us are musicians. We grew up with music or we loved it at a certain point, but that's a different conversation than, hey, I'm going to open up a studio or I'm going to be a engineer for others. What were the influences that kind of pushed you along this journey to where you're at now?
You start from music like way early on, or just how I became an engineer?
How did you start with music?
I think I heard a few Metallica records when I was a little kid, and it like blew my mind, my little 6-year-old mind. And I asked for a guitar for Christmas, and that just started the whole thing. I think I was in 3rd grade when I started playing. So I've played for guitar for a very long time. I'm not nearly as good as I should be for how long I've been playing, but which is almost like 30 years at this point. That's kind of ridiculous. But obviously playing guitar, then you get to the point where you're playing with bands, and then you get to the point where you're on the road, and all these things like just happen so organically anyway. And that's just kind of a product of putting yourself out there and meeting people. Not that I'm like a pro at putting myself out there. I'm very introverted. When I got to college, I kind of, with the music thing, I knew I wanted to do something music, but I didn't know what. I did music business. which was kind of an early degree when I was in college. Met my wife there. We didn't get married till after college, but did like opera. I sang in a couple different aspects in college. Got to tour. It was after college. I went to grad school only because it was 2009 and there were like no jobs to be had. I went for my MBA, which looking back was a terrible decision because it was bad timing all around, man. Everybody was like blaming MBAs and like higher education for the issues that were going on with the economy. I didn't get a single job. Literally looked through a hard drive that I had back then. There were thousands of resumes and cover letters, and it's not like I was a bad student, but I didn't get a single callback. I didn't get a single interview. And all the while, I like had a little bit of recording gear, and I was like trying to make things work, just pay rent and buy food. And it just kind of became one day. I think my dad was like, "You just gotta. Can I curse on this? Is that okay?
Do your thing."
Okay. Well, it's a quote. So he was like, "You gotta shit or get off the pot."
Yeah.
And it was that moment. I was like, okay, this might be something real. Like, I never looked at myself as an engineer. It wasn't really something that I had on my radar that I wanted to do. I wanted to work in HR. So it's definitely a turn. I love what I do now, but it was just kind of a string of happy accidents that got me here.
So along that string of accidents, how do you accidentally open up a commercial studio? I know a lot of people, they have home studios, but it's like, hey, I want to open up a commercial studio. Take us through that. Like, what's kind of like your mind frame with that?
It was stressful. So, I mean, the space started out just, I started out in a basement of an apartment that I was living in with my roommate. When the lease was up there, we had to do something, and I knew I was moving, and we found this building that I'm currently in now for really, really cheap rent. We started the construction process. We did all that. We were on a shoestring budget for like getting the studio to a studio because it was a pain care center when we got it. So surgical rooms, stuff like that. So construction, but all DIY. So very budget friendly. It was about a year into the lease that, without getting into a whole lot of details, like we were like, oh, you either have to move out or you're going to buy the building. And I was horrified because I wasn't ready to do something like that. But like very supportive family and friends somehow did it. And now we're here like 11 years later and we own the building. So
that's crazy. And that's why I kind of like mentioned family as well, because it's not like without that support system, I doubt you'll take on such a thing like this. So with you having a commercial studio, we're living in the day and age now that technology is amazing. It's incredible. A lot of people don't find it necessary to actually have a commercial studio. So for you, what do you say, like, are the pluses and minuses, the pros and the cons of being in the situation you are versus anyone who just has a home studio and just making music like that?
Yeah. And I'm the first to say, like, there's nothing against home studios. That's where I got my start. I think most of what you can do in a recording space, you can get done in a home studio if you have a clear vision of what you want to do. I think the recording studio is for like those special moments. And even that's not to say that those can't happen in a home studio, but like having a larger space lets you do a few more things that you couldn't otherwise do. If the room itself sounds interesting, that's a benefit because then you can mic the room and you can sound more unique than just like killing like the reflections within a bedroom or an office at your house and using reverb and sounding like everybody else. I think having a larger space to record drums is a big differentiating factor. And you could get an aspect of that done in a home environment if you had like a large garage that you were doing. But the thing that I see with it and the selling point for me most of the time when people are coming to me, it's because they want to do drums right, if that makes sense. And that's even a weird way to say it, because I have nothing wrong with doing MIDI drums at your house. It's just, it's a different way to approach making that art. And when you're doing it in a larger room, that's the one thing that's hard to replicate, like at a home studio, because anybody could record drums, or anybody can record guitars or vocals at their house. Bass. Drums are the one that's kind of weird, because you need a whole lot more inputs, you need a whole lot more gear, you need a whole lot more space, and then if you want to capture the room aspect of it, then it kind of becomes a whole thing. So really, when I built this space, or when I'm thinking about adding things to it, I'm more thinking about drums than anything else. I can put guitar amps anywhere, I don't care. Like the vocal booth, I don't think I have one. Other than that, it doesn't really matter. It's more about how are the drums going to sound in here, and that's where my thought goes every single time. So,
well, so let me ask you this: where did you come up with the name, the Recording Studio Loser? Where did?
Okay.
Because when you first, honestly, when I first started watching you, you would say your intro so fast. And I'm a
mumbler.
Like when you even say Resident Loser Jeremy, I'm like, what did he just say? Like, so I'm like, where's the loser in all of this?
I caught so much crap for that too, and that's something I've worked on, because like I have that Midwest mumble, like, Resident Loser Jeremy right here, and it took me a long time to be like, I need to slow down or not even say it anymore, because it's just a natural thing. Resolution. So there's a podcast that I loved, and I was always a podcast guy. I think now I'm a YouTube guy. I just watch everything on YouTube. But before the channel, I was real big into podcasts, and one of them was Recording Studio Rockstars.
Yeah.
And I love that podcast, and it's not throwing any shade at all, but it just kind of happened. I think I told my wife I wanted to try to do something like that, and Recording Studio Loser actually started as a podcast somewhere out there. There's like 12 episodes.
Wow.
So if anybody tracks those down, let me know, because I don't know where they are anymore. But when I was trying to come up with the name, I was like, I love this one. And I honestly didn't think anything would happen. I didn't think it would go anywhere. It was just a thing for me to have fun with. I was like, these guys know what they're doing. Well, what's the opposite of that? It's like, oh, Recording Studio Loser. Like, it was just the antithesis of what I really liked.
Right,
so
you go left.
yeah, it wasn't meant to, like, I don't know, but that's how I got the name. No shade.
All right, yeah, I was always wondering. I'm like, dang, like, is this like a play on like I really love myself, or do I not?
Oh,
like, or am I just like am I a loser or am I not a loser?
No, I think that was the original thought of it, was like the opposite of Recording Studio Rockstar. And then when it comes down to it, like I always approached everything with like, I want to learn something. Like I loved school when I was in there. I loved going to college. I loved going to grad school, even though that particular degree was probably not so smart. But I love learning things, and like the whole idea of being like a loser and learning from your mistakes or learning from other people's mistakes, like always resonated with me. And it was kind of the opposite of like hustle culture, which was pushed really, really hard when I first opened. And I even like attended some courses, like, and there's nothing against those courses, but it's just hard. It didn't resonate with me to be like, you got to work 24/7 and you got to do this and you're going to spend all night in the studio. It's like, that's not the life I want, if I'm being totally honest. So it was kind of owning the opposite of that, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. It made sense to me.
Yeah. So, and I'm glad you said something important. I'm like a big stickler. Like in the music space, I mean, because of YouTube now, goodness gracious, everybody is teaching something. Everybody's showing everybody something or how to do or whatever. I think there's a lot of people who communicate very well, who are very more well spoken than others because of the actual experience that they have, and they're able to communicate what they experienced to others. So I do think like that's a great point to like your channel as well, because you're just not like the engineer who used to do it. You know, you're very much having sessions every day. You're very much using the tools that you have every single day. And there's a million, and this is no knock or no shade, you know, to anyone else who is teaching, who isn't doing it, or who can tell you the difference between cardioid and, you know, omni. You know, it's no shade to anybody just teaching, you know, the actual musicality, the technical aspects of the musicality that we make. But when somebody is actually in it, it brings a different perspective on how to actually use these tools, to try different things, and to not just say, hey, this is how you do it. And, you know, it's from, you know, the first wave plugin, the first wave bundles that ever came out. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, I got a new tool. You know, I want to show you what I did. Like even, you know, I think I saw you using a 414 on a kick drum. You know what I'm saying? Like,
well, that was an Instagram story. Yeah.
You won't get, there's certain things that you don't get from people who aren't experiencing those certain things. So I do believe like a great success to your channel is because of the fact like you're in it all the time. Being though that I mentioned the microphone, I seen you try different microphones, and for one reason or another, I think I saw multiple videos where it was like one microphone. So let me ask you, if you had one microphone, what would it be? And why are you choosing it?
Holy cow.
One.
Oh, man.
Just one.
What's my budget? Like, what area are we shooting for here? Because
I know, right? That's such a loaded question. If okay, let's say if you had to start over, you just had your book bag, you had a Mac, you had an interface, and you had one mic. What is that mic?
Oh, man. Because you could go so many different ways with it. That's really tough. That's a good question, though. Because, I mean, can I approach it with, like, a few different options that are, like, different thought processes?
So let's do this. Give us your top 3 different mics that you would probably choose from and why.
Okay.
So let's do your top 3.
Soyuz 017 tube condenser. I love that mic. It's one of those mics that's, like, it's got a magic quality to it. Our AEA R44, I mean, it's the GOAT with ribbon mics. I mean, come on. It's so vibey, but it also weighs like 20 pounds, so you're probably not going to be buying it as your one mic if you're going to be hauling it around. Then the third one, maybe, I don't know, because I'm torn between going like something like a C414 that is just so versatile, but a little more expensive, or like a KSM 32. Like they're super cheap and crazy versatile. I mean, then you've got stuff like the Mojave dynamic mics that are just stupid. Like, there's a lot of other mics that I love that I should probably say I'm viewing this through context, because most of what I'm doing is working with a bunch of things at once. So it's more about what plays well with other pieces is kind of how I view mics in general. So it's really hard to pick one. Holy cow. I'm not answering the question. Yeah, I apologize.
I can't listen. I can't answer that question for myself, so that's why I'm always intrigued, to hear everybody else. I'm like, well, you mean top 10, right? Like top 10 mics, not one. Right. You mean 10? I mean,
because realistically, one's not going to work for everything.
One. It's just not. It's not. So let me ask you this. You did something that very few of us are willing to do. You've been places that a lot of us will not choose to go. We will not make that journey. And you chose to try out almost every single doll available. with your journey of trying out every single DAW, first let me ask you this. What's your overall impression on the different systems that you use? What's kind of like your overall consensus from trying all of them? And then besides Pro Tools, what do you think is the DAW that's like, hey, if I didn't use Pro Tools, I would use this?
I will say I'm not done with trying all of them out yet. There's still a couple I haven't gotten my hands on, or just haven't had the time to do the video with yet. Because I don't want to just get in there and just toss some tracks at it and mix it. Like, I want to try to get to know it, which is really hard with a DAW. Like, you really got to spend time to figure out the quirks, or to at least identify what some of those quirks would be and how they differentiate from your own personal workflow. Because I know Pro Tools like the back of my hand, so I'm definitely biased when it comes in there, because I think obviously whether I'm conscious about it or unconscious about it, I'm going to be looking at what's similar to Pro Tools. What I've learned is that I can do basically everything I need to do with any DAW. Especially when it comes to mixing. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm using. If you're just mixing, there's no difference. Like, there was slight workflow changes that may happen, but I can mix in any DAW, period. What I notice difference-wise, and this is like a Pro Tools bias coming out, is the editing factor. I haven't found one that I can do as fast as Pro Tools, or even close. Because I'm doing a ton of drum editing, like a lot of vocal comping, and I know there's DAWs that are like getting there and getting better with it. And maybe if I spent a little time, I could get pretty close. But with that aside, I think there's three that I really, really like. Logic, just because it kind of gets you to think really creatively, and the built-in sounds that are there. Like, if you're starting out, it's hard to beat Logic.
Yeah, Logic's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're somebody using like software instruments, it's kind of a no-brainer, because there's so much built in there. And obviously, like, massive records have been made on Logic. Studio One, because it feels the most like Pro Tools to me. And again, but that's a very biased thing coming out. The other one is Cubase, I think, because with like pre-production, there are things you can do in Cubase that you can't do in other DAWs.
So let me say
I really
this.
like that.
I'm a Cubase user. That's what I choose to use. I've been using Cubase for a while. I have Pro Tools, have Logic. I use Cubase because of some of those features, like you stated, and coming from a place to where it's like beginning to end, songwriting, pre-production, production, recording, mixing, mastering, one session if you want, one whole session if you want.
Dude, just the arrangement stuff in Cubase, the way they do it right. It's really cool.
Yeah, so I remember when you did that video. I mean, watching your video from somebody who uses that DAW.
Oh, I'm sure
some stuff was a bit cringy. It was you could have just hit F3. You know what I'm saying? But no, for the most part,
stuff like that.
Yeah, but the music community, I'm pretty sure we all enjoyed that, because you can be biased all day inside the system that you use, but if you don't know what's actually going on out there, you really don't have an objective perspective on how good is the tool you're actually using versus what everybody else is actually using. So we actually do appreciate that. One thing you do on your channel that we all appreciate is that you talk about kind of the nuances of like running your studio professionally, but a lot of the critical decision making or topics that a lot of people have questions on. You talk about things I should have known before I even opened up the studio, finances, even things of that nature. Throughout your career, what are some of the most valuable tips that you received for your success in running your studio and your production? What's kind of like some of the most valuable tips that you ever learned?
That it's all about the customer, like regardless of the type of business that you're running. And I think I learned that from my dad, because I kind of got my like entrepreneurial kick in the butt from him. 'Cause when we were little, he worked in a factory, but he started a business. It was actually a restaurant, but it, the way he approached doing business, I got to watch it, and I don't think I appreciated it when I was younger, looking at how he did it. Because there was a fair bit of like things that I didn't want to replicate watching him as well, and I think he would understand that as well. Like being there so long, like 10, 12, 13, 14-hour days. Like sometimes you have to do that when you own your business. I get it, but it was super helpful to like watch how he approached business and seeing what made him happy, seeing what didn't make him happy, seeing what made us happy, seeing, and the antithesis. But that ultimately, no matter what you're selling, food, services, recording, mixes, masters, pre-production, it's all about the customer. And I mean, I think this is not meant to toot my own horn whatsoever. I don't have any real credits. I'm not on any big records. I don't have any awards, but I have a successful business, and I think that comes down to it's just approaching things, treating your customer right, whether they are that massive client or just somebody making music for fun, I don't know. And I've seen people make it and people fail in a whole lot of different levels of what we do. But it seems like some pushback with our industry as a whole is like, it goes back to the hustle culture. It goes back to like success and fame, and maybe even tying back into my name, Recording Studio Loser. Like, look, you don't have to be the household name here. You don't have to be famous. You don't need a Grammy. Don't get me wrong, I'd love one. but like, and those goals are fine to have, but like to have a business that can support your family and support your own aspirations and what you want to do in the industry, it's possible without any of those things. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I answered the question at all, but I kind of went off on a tangent there. Sorry.
No, you definitely answered the question. And it's definitely valuable for, others to learn, because I feel like some things it's like, you should eat vegetables. It's kind of like one of those things, but to actually see somebody who has, like you said, the idea of success that a lot of people may have sometimes gets skewed because they look at they think success is tied to a specific result, and a tangible result, even the credit or the award, but you're like living proof and a testimony that's like, hey, success is kind of the ins and outs of the everyday and how you treat every single person and how you can achieve the specific goals. And the more specific goals you achieve over time, you understand that you kind of have reached the massive goal, which is actually how to be successful. So no, yeah, you definitely answered it. Definitely answered the question. Let me ask you this question real quick. If somebody is starting out, it's 2023, towards the middle of 2023. Somebody is starting out now. It's a little different than probably when you started out, when I started out. Somebody wanted to get into music. Somebody wanted to be an engineer, or just trying to get themselves in the industry. Like, what are they? What do you think they should be doing now? You know, it's a little different back then. It was, you know, go to school, rub, you know, shake hands with the right people, rub elbows with the right people, and you know, now you know we're all, you know, we're self-taught by YouTube University nowadays. So, what's kind of your take to that person that's like, hey, I want to be like Jeremy one day? What do you what do you tell them to do?
I went to school. I didn't necessarily go to school for this. I don't know that I would say go to school to learn it. If that's what you want to do, there's definitely validity to going and getting an education. As somebody who appreciates secondary education, I'm all for it if that's what you want to do. But if you're looking at it, if you have that hyper focus, like I want to work in a studio, and I can speak to my own kind of niche in the music industry here and understand there's a whole lot of different things to approach. But if you're looking at it like I want to work in a studio with somebody, it's going to be difficult to get your foot in the door. But there's a couple ways that could make it really, really easy. If you go with YouTube University and you learn how to do two things, edit drums and tune vocals. I don't think it matters what software you're going to learn to do it on. If you learn Pro Tools, you're probably going to be safe because you could probably do it in just about any DAW. But if you learn to tune vocals and edit drums and you go to an engineer and say, I want to learn from you, here's what I can do to add value to you. Will you teach me other things? Anybody would teach you. Like, that's so much work off of the engineer you would be working for. They would not say no to you. I think it is kind of shocking how many people want internships with no value to add. And I understand because I was there, and I think I thought that same way when I was younger. But there is a certain amount, especially when you're talking to someone who owns their own business and maybe they're also the chief engineer and they're doing all the sessions, like having you there, if you're not adding some form of value, slows that person down a ton. So I don't really like the model of internships because you're working somebody for free. But in that aspect, when you're really thinking about what are they adding to the process, or are they kind of, you know, they're slowing everything down and you're teaching them, which is noble, but it's also not necessarily running a charity. So you can go to school and do the more traditional method with that, and you're going to pay a whole lot for it, or put in a little bit of time. I mean, you could learn to edit drums decently in 2 weeks if you put your head down and just do it. And take that to an engineer and stick with that person for a year, I guarantee you'll learn more than what you would learn in a 4-year degree with that person in your own field, and you would have spent nothing. You know, maybe you have to pick up another job on the side to like make ends meet while you're doing it, but think about what you would be spending at like a really expensive university to learn that, and then you have no contacts when you're finished. Over here, you're actually doing the work. You're actually working with somebody. You're learning it from somebody who's doing it now, not who did it maybe 10, 15 years ago. Maybe they're still plugged into the industry. Maybe not. Depends where you go. I don't know. There's so many different angles to take on it, but it's all about what value can you give to somebody else if you want to get value from them.
Cool. So let me ask you this. What are some things that you have down the line that you're kind of wanting to do? Like, you're doing a lot now, you know, but what are some of the things you're looking to do either on the YouTube channel or even with the space? You know, what's on the agenda for Jeremy from here kind of out? Like, what are the things that you're planning for?
I don't know. I'm always looking to improve things and make make things better, I feel like I build a new studio desk once a year, so maybe that's coming up. I don't know. I did have a Gavin Haverstick who designs studios. He came by, and we might be looking at installing like an Atmos space here, just because there's nothing in our area like that. So that's on the radar, and then I'm also looking at putting together like different courses because, like you said, everybody on YouTube's teaching something. So I'm looking at putting together some different things in a couple different aspects. So that's always on the radar.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jeremy, look, I don't want to take up too much time. We appreciate you jumping on with us today. If you were to be known for one thing, what would you want to be known for?
Holy cow. That's heavy. That's a heavy way to end, right?
It's heavy.
I don't know. I would hope I would be known as the guy who always tried his best, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. It's not a great answer.
I think that was more of an answer like, hey, you'll think about that like right before you go to bed. You'll be like, hey, what do I want to be known for? It's like,
yeah, you just got me in an existential crisis, man.
yeah, I ask everybody that question because we all contribute in some way, shape, or form, and everyone can have their own perspective kind of on the things that we're doing, but if somebody was unclear about the reasons to why we do what we do, that's a question I ask, it's kind of like an internal question that I ask everyone to, see if like the things we are doing, are the things that we want to be known for doing, the things that we really want to use to have an impact to this world. So yeah, super heavy question. Save it all the way at the end,
Well, I think then it would be, if I can wrap it back to the recording studio, because I think that I think of myself doing that first before YouTube, but it would be just helping artists get the vision out of their head. And that's whatever tools needed to do that. Like getting my own ego completely out of the way. I don't want people to hear me on records. It's how do I get the artist's vision out in the most efficient and emotionally forward way possible.
Man, listen, nobody can tell your story like you can tell it. Jeremy, we thank you for jumping on with us today. Can you let the people know where they can find you, where you will want them to go, how they can support you? If you got something new, we can always link it below. So,
yeah, if you want to check out the channel, it's just YouTube. Search for Recording Studio Loser. You'll find me there.
Cool. Guys, we thank you all for joining us on today. Before you leave, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more videos like this, and we will see you in the next video.